The detailed story of the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. Opening, a lullaby from the Tiber River. Close your eyes and let your mind drift along the shimmering waters of the Tiber River. Picture yourself lying on a soft meadow, with moonlight gently spilling over you and the breeze softly singing ancient melodies, like whispers from the gods. Here, thousands of years ago, a grand story began, the story of Rome, a humble village nestled among 7 hills, which rose to become the center of the world, only to fade quietly like a dream. Let me tell you this tale, slowly, gently, like a lullaby in the quiet of the night. We'll walk through the earliest days when shepherds dreamed of glory, the radiant years when the Colosseum echoed with laughter, the ordinary moments of a Roman family, and the sorrowful hours when Rome's light dimmed. Relax, take a deep breath, and let this dream carry you on a long journey, where time stands still. Part 1. The Early Days and the Age of Kings. Imagine a small village by the Tiber in the 8th century BCE. Thatched roofs sway in the breeze, smoke curls from clay hearths, and the bleating of sheep echoes through the lush valley. This is early Rome, a community of shepherds and farmers, living simply but brimming with ambition. Legend tells us that Rome was founded in 753 BCE by Romulus, an orphaned boy raised by a she-wolf. Picture Romulus, a young man with tousled black hair and fiery eyes, standing on the Palatine Hill, gripping a bronze plow to mark the city's boundaries under the sun. He became the first king, living in a modest wooden house with a straw roof and a small hearth. Each morning, Romulus kindled a sacred fire before an altar to Mars, praying for the prosperity of his people. Clad in a crimson cloak, a symbol of power, he led young warriors to conquer neighboring tribes, like the Sabines. Life under Romulus was arduous yet vibrant. The people gathered for festivals, dancing around bonfires, singing hymns to the gods. Women wove woolen tunics, children played stone-throwing games by the river, and men forged bronze knives in crude smithies. Romulus was not just a king, but a shaper of society. He divided the people into tribes, established laws, and built the first temple to Jupiter on the Capitoline Hill. Yet Romulus was shrouded in mystery. It's said that during a great storm, he vanished amid thunder and lightning, taken to the heavens by the gods. Imagine the people standing still, gazing at the gray sky, whispering that Romulus had become Quirinus, Rome's eternal protector. After Romulus, 6 other kings ruled Rome, each leaving their mark. Numa Pompilius, the second king, was a lover of peace and piety. He lived in a small house on the Quirinal Hill with a garden of olive and vine. Each morning, Numa stepped into the village square, clad in a white robe, teaching the people how to honor Vesta, goddess of the hearth. He created the Roman calendar with 12 months, guiding farmers on when to sow and reap. Picture Numa, with silver hair and a kind smile, sitting under an oak tree, writing prayers on wooden tablets while children played nearby. He built the Temple of Janus, whose gates closed only in times of peace, a rare symbol in Rome's war-filled history. Tullus Hostilius, the third king, was Numa's opposite. A fierce warrior, he lived in a small fortress on the Esquiline Hill, where he forged swords and trained soldiers. Imagine Tullus, in bronze armor with his hair tied back, rallying his army before battle. He conquered the city of Alba Longa, expanding Rome's territory. Tullus held victory ceremonies, where the people feasted on roasted beef and drank wine from clay jugs. But he was also ruthless, ordering the execution of enemies in the Forum, leaving the people both awestruck and uneasy. Ancus Marcius, the fourth king, brought prosperity. He built the port of Ostia at the Tiber's mouth, opening trade routes. Picture wooden ships laden with wheat and salt docking at sunset, while Ancus, in a blue cloak, stood on the shore chatting with merchants. He constructed the first wooden bridge across the Tiber, the Pons Sublicius, linking the city's banks. The people loved Ancus, for he distributed land to the poor and held festivals where all danced and sang to Ceres, goddess of agriculture. But the final 3 kings, of the Tarquin dynasty, cast a shadow. Lucius Tarquinius Priscus, the fifth king, lived extravagantly, building the first stone houses. He organized chariot races at the Circus Maximus, where the crowd cheered as carts sped by. Servius Tullius, the sixth king, was a reformer. He divided the people into classes based on wealth, built a wall around the 7 hills, and created an electoral system. Imagine Servius with a pensive gaze, walking through dirt streets, listening to the people's murmurs about new laws. He lived in a large house but kept his door open to the poor, sharing bread and wine. Tarquin the Proud, the final king, embodied arrogance. He lived in a stone palace on the Capitoline Hill, dining on lavish feasts of venison, peacock, and Greek wine. Picture Tarquin, with a golden crown and a silver-embroidered cloak, standing on his balcony, gazing coldly at the people below. He ordered the construction of a grand temple to Jupiter, but forced the people to toil until exhaustion. When his son, Sextus, committed a crime against a noblewoman named Lucretia, the people's rage erupted. In 509 BCE, they rose up, overthrew Tarquin, and vowed never again to be ruled by kings. Imagine the roar of the crowd in the Forum as Lucius Junius Brutus, a noble, declared Rome a republic. The people embraced, singing songs of freedom as hearth fires lit up the night sky. Part 2. Everyday Life in the Republic. Imagine. You're part of an ordinary Roman family in the Republic around 200 BCE, as Rome rises to dominate the Mediterranean. Your family lives in a small domus in the bustling but cramped Subura district. The house has baked brick walls, a red-tiled roof, and a tiny courtyard with a well. Each morning as the sun rises, the father, Lucius, wakes, dons a white woolen tunic, and walks through stone-paved streets to the Forum market. Lucius is a shoemaker, sitting under a fig tree, hammering nails into sandals for merchants, soldiers, and occasionally a wealthy senator. The clink of his hammer, the calls of fish vendors, and the aroma of fresh bread from a nearby bakery mingle in the air. Lucius often overhears political debates at the Basilica Aemilia, where orators shout about war and laws. The mother, Claudia, stays home, weaving cloth on a wooden loom. She hums folk songs about Ceres, teaching her daughter, Julia, aged 12, to make libum, a sweet cheesecake baked on bay leaves offered to the household gods. Julia loves running to the courtyard, where Claudia grows parsley, basil, and a small olive tree. She picks leaves, breathes their scent, and sometimes sneaks a ripe olive. The son, Marcus, 15, attends lessons with a teacher in the Palatine district. The teacher, a Greek named Callistus, drills Marcus in reading Ennius's poetry, writing Latin on wax tablets, and studying Roman history. Marcus dreams of becoming a lawyer, speaking at the Forum like Cicero. In the afternoons he plays tally, a dice game with sheep bones, with friends in the street, laughing when he wins a colored stone. Dinner is a sacred time. The family gathers in the triclinium, a small room with 3 couches draped in wool. They eat wheat porridge with beans, pickled olives, dried fish from Ostia, and sometimes roasted pork on festival days. Claudia tells tales of Juno, protector of women, while Lucius shares Forum news that Scipio Africanus defeated Hannibal at Zama, bringing glory to Rome. Julia listens, eyes wide, while Marcus asks if he can join the army. After dinner, they stand before a small altar in the courtyard, where a clay statue of the god Lar stands silently. Claudia lights an oil lamp, whispering a prayer for protection from illness and war. Their life is far from easy. Lucius works from dawn to dusk, his hands calloused from hammer and leather. Claudia worries when harvests fail, as wheat prices soar. They live in a modest domus, but many poorer families cram into insulae, tall brick tenements, prone to collapse and fire. On festival days, Lucius's family dons their finest tunics and walks through crowded streets to the Temple of Jupiter on the Capitoline Hill. They bring a chicken to sacrifice, standing among the throng, listening to priests chant and smelling burning incense. Julia holds her mother's hand, gazing at glittering god statues, while Marcus dreams of entering the Senate one day. While Lucius's family lives simply, Rome expands through the Punic Wars against Carthage, 264 to 146 BCE. Hannibal, Carthage's general, leads elephants over the Alps, crushing Roman armies at Cannae in 216 BCE. Imagine Claudia's fear hearing Hannibal approaches, and the joy when Scipio Africanus defeats him at Zama in 202 BCE. Rome conquers Carthage, Greece, and Egypt, building a vast empire. Stone roads like the Via Appia link Rome to distant cities, carrying merchants, soldiers, and ideas. Aqueducts like the Aqua Appia bring fresh water to fountains, and marble temples rise everywhere. But wealth breeds inequality. Senators and nobles build lavish villas on the Palatine Hill with gardens and mosaics. The poor, like Lucius's family, struggle to survive. The Gracchi brothers, Tiberius and Gaius, push reforms to redistribute land to the poor but are assassinated by powerful senators. Imagine Claudia in the Forum crowd weeping when Gaius is killed, her dream of justice shattered. This unrest paves the way for strong leaders, and Rome prepares for a new era. Part 3. From Republic to Empire. The Lives of Emperors. The late Republic in the 1st century BCE was chaotic. Generals like Marius and Sulla vied for power, sparking civil wars. Imagine Lucius, now an aging father, anxious as soldiers patrol the streets, and Claudia praying more fervently before the Lar altar. In this turmoil, Julius Caesar, a brilliant general, rises like a star. Picture Caesar, with short hair, piercing eyes, and a charming smile, entering the Senate in a purple-bordered toga. He lives in a Palatine Hill palace with red-painted walls and mosaic floors depicting Neptune. Each morning, Caesar rises at dawn, reads letters from the provinces, and meets advisors in a grand room lit by colored glass windows. He breakfasts on bread, honey, and diluted wine, then orders the construction of bridges, roads, and temples to bolster his power. Caesar conquers Gaul, modern France, bringing gold and slaves. Imagine him in silver armor, on a war chariot, leading troops through Gaul's fields, while Rome's people cheer his return, scattering rose petals. But Caesar stirs controversy, declaring himself dictator for life. He alarms senators fearing he seeks kingship. In 44 BCE, in the Senate, Caesar is stabbed by friends like Brutus and Cassius. Picture that moment. Caesar, blood-soaked toga, collapsing at Pompey's statue's base, whispering, "Et tu, Brute? Even you, Brutus?" The people, stunned, crowd the Forum, mourning their leader. After Caesar's death, Rome plunges into civil war. His nephew, Octavian, and General Mark Antony vie for control. Imagine Antony, with curly hair and a deep voice, living in an Alexandria villa, dining lavishly with Queen Cleopatra on antelope and Chian wine. Octavian, by contrast, lives simply, in a Palatine palace with white walls and wooden furniture. He eats bread, cheese, and olives for breakfast, meets senators daily, and builds alliances. In 31 BCE, Octavian defeats Antony and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium off Greece's coast. Picture Roman warships, with bronze rams crashing into Egyptian fleets, as Octavian, on deck, watches smoke rise from the sea. In 27 BCE, Octavian becomes Augustus, Rome's first emperor. Imagine Augustus, with a refined face and pensive eyes, in a white tunic, strolling through his palace garden, where pomegranate trees and Apollo statues stand. His palace is grand yet understated, with mosaics of dolphins and waves. Each morning, Augustus meets advisors, reads reports from Britannia, Persia, and Egypt, and writes letters to generals in black ink on papyrus. He lunches with his wife, Livia, enjoying grilled fish, greens, and olive-oiled bread. Livia, intelligent and powerful, manages the palace, meets Roman noblewomen, and sometimes meddles in politics, earning Augustus's respect and caution. Augustus ushers in the Pax Romana, over 200 years of peace. He rebuilds Rome in marble, erecting the Temple of Mars Ultor and the Forum of Augustus. Picture the city under him, polished stone streets, towering aqueducts, and laughter echoing from the Colosseum, where people watch gladiator fights. Augustus loves poetry, inviting Virgil to read the Aeneid by lamplight, but he's strict, passing laws to promote marriage and punish adultery, angering some nobles. After Augustus, successors bring light and shadow. Tiberius, crowned in 14 CE, lives in isolation on Capri, in a cliffside villa. He eats simply bread, fish, and wine, but is paranoid, executing suspected traitors. Imagine Tiberius, silver-haired and cold-eyed, sitting alone, gazing at the sea, as spies report from Rome. Caligula, crowned in 37, is infamous for madness. He lives in a golden palace, wearing gem-stitched silk, dining on flamingo and sweet wine. Tales say he made his horse a consul, sparking whispers of decline. Assassinated in 41, he leaves Rome in chaos. Claudius, crowned in 41, surprises all, despite a stammer. He conquers Britannia. Picture Claudius, with unkempt hair and a limp in his library, reading Etruscan history scrolls as advisors report on war. He eats humbly, loving bean soup and bread, and chats with scholars. But Claudius is poisoned in 54 by his wife, Agrippina, passing the throne to her son, Nero. Nero, crowned in 54, embodies excess and cruelty. He lives in the Domus Aurea, a golden palace with a lake and glittering mosaics. Imagine Nero, with golden hair and a silk toga, singing and playing the lyre on stage as guards clap awkwardly. He feasts on lion meat, peacock, and Cretan wine, often until midnight. Nero loves art, but is brutal, ordering the deaths of his mother and wife to secure power. In 64, a fire ravages Rome. Rumors say Nero watched the flames, composing poetry, then blamed Christians. He orders their persecution, with many burned alive or thrown to lions at the Circus Maximus. Picture the cries of believers in the dark as flames light the sky. Overthrown in 68, Nero commits suicide in a villa, ending the Julio-Claudian dynasty. Part 4. Golden Age and Deepening Cracks. Imagine Rome at its zenith, from the 1st to 2nd centuries CE, under emperors Trajan, Hadrian, and Marcus Aurelius. The city is a jewel, with gleaming marble domes, polished stone streets, and laughter echoing from the Colosseum. Markets buzz with merchants from Persia, Egypt, and Britannia, selling silk, spices, and pearls. Towering aqueducts bring fresh water to fountains, and temples like the Pantheon shine under the sun. But beneath this radiant glow, cracks appear, like fissures in an ancient painting, signaling decline. Trajan, crowned in 98, is a warrior emperor beloved by the people. Picture Trajan with a stern face and short hair and bronze armor, leading troops to conquer Dacia, modern Romania. He sleeps in army tents, eating wheat porridge and dried fish with soldiers, and writes to his wife, Plotina, nightly. Trajan stands on a Dacian hill, gazing at gold mines, dreaming of an immortal Rome. He uses Dacia's wealth to build the Forum of Trajan, with marble columns depicting victories. Imagine this forum, with a library, temple, and Trajan's 30-meter column, where people gather, read, and chat. Trajan walks through markets in a simple tunic, buying bread from public bakeries, and listens to complaints about taxes, but his expansions stretch the empire's borders too far, from the Atlantic to the Persian Gulf, exhausting the army and treasury. Hadrian, crowned in 117, is an artist and traveler. Picture Hadrian, with curly hair and a Greek beard, in a white toga, sketching temple designs in his palace library. He designs the Pantheon, with its vast dome, where sunlight streams through a circular opening, casting a divine glow. Hadrian loves travel, visiting Britannia to Egypt, living in tents or temporary palaces. In Britannia, he builds Hadrian's Wall, a 120-kilometer stone barrier against the Picts. Imagine Hadrian, on the wall, cold wind blowing, gazing at green hills as Roman soldiers light fires. He withdraws from Mesopotamia, admitting the empire cannot expand forever, and focuses on fortifying borders. In Rome, Hadrian lives with his wife, Sabina, but their marriage is cold. He adores Antinous, a young man, and when Antinous drowns, in the Nile, Hadrian grieves, building temples and statues empire-wide. The people whisper about this love, but respect Hadrian's wisdom. Marcus Aurelius, crowned in 161, is the philosopher-emperor. Picture Marcus with tousled hair and weary eyes and a worn tunic, sleeping on a hard wooden bed to discipline himself. He lives in a Palatine palace but often stays in army tents along the Danube, fighting Germanic tribes. Each night, by lamplight, Marcus writes meditations, reflecting on life, death, and duty. Imagine him, in his tent, hearing wolves howl in the forest, writing, "Live as if today were your last, but act as if you'll live forever." He eats simply, bread, bean soup, sometimes an apple, sharing soldiers' hardships. But his reign is darkened by the Antonine Plague, likely smallpox, killing millions. Picture empty markets, insulae filled with bodies and wails from homes. Claudia, now an elderly woman in Lucius's family, prays before the Lar altar, but her oil lamp dims. Marcus dies in 180, leaving the throne to his son Commodus, a grave mistake. Commodus, crowned at 17, embodies decadence. Picture Commodus, with golden hair and rippling muscles, in silk and gold necklaces, calling himself Hercules. He lives in a lavish palace, feasting on lion meat and sweet wine, and fights gladiators in staged Colosseum matches to always win. The people initially love Commodus, but grow to despise him as he neglects governance, letting corrupt advisors rule. Imagine Lucius, now a young father in a new generation, in the Colosseum crowd, shaking his head as Commodus swings a sword, while wheat prices soar outside. In 192, Commodus is assassinated by his guards, sparking civil war, with emperors rising and falling in blood and fire. The 3rd century is a crisis era. Inflation renders bronze coins worthless. A loaf of bread might cost a month's wages. Barbarian tribes like Goths, Alemanni, and Sassanids attack borders. Picture Lucius, now a poor farmer, watching Goths trample his wheat fields while Claudia prays in a small house, asking the gods to protect their son Marcus, a Roman soldier on the frontier. Emperors like Decius and Valerian fight back, but many are killed or captured. In 260, Valerian is taken prisoner by Persian king Shapur I, the first Roman emperor, humiliated thus. The people, shocked, feel the gods have forsaken them. Emperor Diocletian, crowned in 284, brings temporary stability. Picture Diocletian, with a stern face and wary eyes, living in a fortified Nicomedia palace, always in armor, fearing assassination. He eats simply, wheat porridge, greens, and water, and works tirelessly, reading provincial reports until midnight. Diocletian divides the empire into 4 parts: the Tetrarchy, for easier governance, appointing co-emperors like Maximian and Constantius. He fixes prices to curb inflation, but the people still starve. Imagine Claudia, now a young mother in a new family, queuing for hours at the market for a small, overpriced loaf. Diocletian persecutes Christians, ordering churches burned and believers killed, believing they threaten unity. Picture Christians hiding in catacombs, singing hymns in the dark, defying fear, yet their faith spreads like an unquenchable light. Part 5. The Fall and Life in the Shadows. Imagine a frigid winter day, with dark clouds cloaking Rome's sky. By the 4th century, the Western Roman Empire, centered in Rome, is like a weary giant, staggering before a storm. The Eastern Roman Empire, with Constantinople, thrives, but the West sinks into chaos. Stone roads, once carrying merchants and ideas, now bear invaders' footprints. Temples gather dust, aqueducts crack, and the Colosseum stands silent, with only the wind whistling through weed-grown stone seats. Constantine and the role of Christianity. Constantine, crowned in 306, is a transformative force, an emperor shaping Rome's fate. Picture Constantine, tall, with short hair and resolute eyes, in a purple gold-stitched toga, standing on the Milvian Bridge in 312. Before battling Maxentius, he sees a cross in the sky, with the words, "In hoc signo vinces." By this sign you will conquer. He orders crosses painted on soldiers' shields and wins decisively. Converting to Christianity, he legalizes it via the Edict of Milan in 313, ending centuries of persecution. Imagine Constantine kneeling in a private Constantinople chapel, praying before a golden cross, as candles flicker on mosaics. He builds the Church of St. Peter in Rome, on Vatican Hill, and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, making Christianity a cultural cornerstone. Christianity brings hope to the people. Picture Livia, Claudia's descendant, standing in St. Peter's, holding her daughter Lucia's hand, singing Kyrie Eleison under candlelight. Believers, once hiding in catacombs, now gather openly, sharing bread and wine in Mass. Bishops, like Ambrose in Milan, organize relief, distributing food and cloaks to the poor. Christianity unites the people, especially the poor, as the old gods seem to have failed, but it also divides. Worshippers of Jupiter and Apollo view Christians as traitors, sparking forum debates and street violence. Imagine Lucius, now a poor blacksmith in a crowd, hearing a Christian priest preach, while another hurls stones, shouting that Jupiter will punish. Constantine lives in a splendid Constantinople palace with angel mosaics and marble floors. He eats simply, bread, bean soup, sometimes an apple, to show piety, fasting on Fridays. Each morning he meets bishops and generals, reading letters from Britannia, Gaul, and Persia. Constantine convenes the Council of Nicaea in 325, unifying Christian doctrine, defining the Trinity. Picture him in a silver crown, among 300 bishops in a grand hall, listening to debates as Goths threaten the borders outside. He strengthens the army, builds Rhine forts, and travels provinces, sleeping in temporary tents, reading reports by lamplight. But the empire is too vast, and the army cannot guard everywhere. Constantine dies in 337, baptized on his deathbed, leaving a Rome torn between Christianity and the old faith. Decline and the sacks of Rome. After Constantine, weak emperors worsen the situation. Julian, crowned in 361, tries to restore the old religion. Picture Julian with long hair and a Greek beard, in coarse cloth, eating wheat porridge, writing philosophical letters about Apollo. He leads troops to Persia but dies in battle in 363, ending his dream of reviving the old gods. Christianity dominates, with churches rising on old temple sites. Imagine Livia, now middle-aged, watching the temple of Vesta raised for a small church, her heart torn between sorrow and hope. The people live in fear. Picture Gaius's family, Lucius's descendants, in a crumbling insula in Rome, 400 CE. Gaius, once a blacksmith, is jobless, queuing for free church bread. Livia, his wife, sews cloaks for the poor at church, teaching Lucia, their 10-year-old daughter, to sing hymns. Aqueducts fail, streets flood with filth, and insulae shake in strong winds. The people crowd churches, praying to dispel fear. The rich flee to countryside villas, leaving the poor like Gaius to face fate. Imagine Lucia, trembling in her mother's arms, hearing distant hooves, fearing barbarians approach. In 378, the Battle of Adrianople is a disaster. Emperor Valens, in silver armor with an eagle standard, faces the Visigoths but is crushed. Picture the Adrianople field, smoke rising, bodies strewn, and survivors' wails. Valens dies, his body lost. This defeat shows Rome's army is no longer invincible. Germanic tribes, Visigoths, Vandals, Huns, see opportunity and invasions, grow fiercer. In 410, the Visigoths, led by Alaric, sack Rome. Alaric, tall with golden hair, once served Rome but was betrayed. He leads his army through the Salarian Gate, plundering for 3 days. Picture the chaos, people fleeing at night, clutching tunics and Lar statues, temples smashed, gold and silver stolen, smoke rising from the Forum, where books burn to ash. Gaius's family hides in a wine cellar, hearing screams and clashing swords. Livia holds Lucia, whispering hymns as Gaius grips a knife, ready to defend. Some seek refuge in St. Peter's, where priests pray loudly to repel Visigoths. But many are killed or enslaved, especially women and children. Imagine Lucia, behind her mother, seeing a neighbor dragged away, her cries blending with the wind. Alaric spares total destruction, but the shock reverberates. Rome, the invincible city, has fallen. In 455, the Vandals, led by Gaiseric, sack Rome again. Picture Vandal ships landing near Ostia, warriors in leather and iron axes storming the city. They steal church gold, smash statues, and ship treasures to North Africa. The population, now mere tens of thousands, lives in misery. Gaius, now frail, shuffles through streets, scavenging dropped bread. Livia and Lucia work at church, handing out cloaks, their hearts heavy. Picture Livia, silver-haired, in church, gazing at a Christ mosaic, praying for Lucia's future. Markets are empty, the Colosseum overgrown. Churches become final sanctuaries, where people gather, sing hymns, and share meager food, a loaf, some dried fish, an olive. The end of Western Rome. By 476, Western Rome is a shadow. Emperor Honorius, crowned in 395, is a frail boy living in Ravenna's palace, shielded by marshes. Picture Honorius with golden hair and vacant eyes, feeding pigeons for hours as advisors argue over war. In 408, General Stilicho, Honorius's protector, is executed for suspected treason, stripping Rome of its last skilled commander. Germanic tribes press on, and Honorius, powerless, prays in church. Romulus Augustulus, crowned in 475, is the final emperor. Picture Romulus, a 12-year-old with sad eyes, in an oversized purple toga, living in a Ravenna villa. He plays with pigeons and wooden horses, while his father Orestes struggles to hold the empire. Romulus is a puppet among generals and tribes. In 476, Odoacer, a Germanic leader, enters Ravenna. He spares Romulus, sending him to a Campania villa, where he lives alone, watching the sea and tending birds. Odoacer declares himself king of Italy, and Western Rome ends. The fall is a long sigh. Rome, once home to over 1 million, now holds tens of thousands amid ruins. The Colosseum is silent, temples collapse, and stone roads crack. Picture Gaius and Livia, now elderly, in a small house, telling Lucia of the Golden Age, when Augustus walked the Forum and Constantine built churches. Lucia, now a young woman, holds her mother's hand, singing a hymn, hoping Rome might rise again. But their story is only memory, like a distant dream. Closing, the eternal dream returned to the Tiber, where the story began. The breeze still sings, and moonlight still dances on the water. Rome rose, radiant as the sun, and faded like a dream. But its legacy, from stone roads to Livia's hymns, from Constantine's throne to the people's resilience, lives on. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let this story lull you to sleep. Good night, with Rome's eternal memories by your side.